I want to say that I'm going to watch this next video. It's been suggested that I watch it about how the World Bank is trapping Ukraine in debt. And I cannot speak to this creator. I don't know what kind of content they make. I hope it's good. I wonder if there's TOS in here. I hope there's no TOS. We'll see. This is a piece by Tran. Got like 1.1 million subbies on YouTube over there. It's pretty wild. Here we go. I'm going to cross my fingers. Here we go.
Something strange happened with the war in Ukraine. On the turn of a dime, the entire narrative from every Western government, mainstream media, and corporations went from COVID fear-mongering to Putin fear-mongering, all within the span of pretty much a day. All for a country called Ukraine. A country that before the invasion, the majority of the US population has never even heard of, much or less be able to point it out on a map. And let's be real, 9/11 type events happen pretty much every day in the Middle East, Africa, and in poor Asian nations. Every day, and no one cares. There's something deeper going on here.
Yeah.
Yes, the war in Ukraine is wrong, but what's the incentive for all these—
Yeah, folks, you may want to ask yourself why they got you so whipped up over Ukraine, but not other places.
Powerful people to care all of a sudden? What is the incentive for this hashtag Stand With Ukraine narrative, which we should be doing, by the way? I've actually been to Ukraine before. I care about the place. But you have to ask yourself, who stands to profit from helping Ukraine? And why is anyone who doesn't toe the party line under threat of getting cancelled? Well, as always, it turns out that if you follow the money, you'll find the answer. There are many profiteers when it comes to Ukraine, from weapons manufacturers to construction companies who have to rebuild the country once it's over. But the one group that it comes down to, the wolf in sheep's clothing who pretends to care but really stands to make the most profits, are the bankers. This is how you profit off of the war in Ukraine, while looking like a saint. One of the weapons Russia is using against Ukraine isn't a physical weapon, but a digital one. Armies of some of the most sophisticated hackers in the world, aiming to shut down Ukraine's infrastructure, like their electrical grid. But you don't have to be a victim of war to be targeted by hackers. In fact, someone gets their identity stolen every 14 seconds, with a more than 200% increase in identity theft from 2019 to 2021. So it's not a matter of if you're going to be targeted by hackers, but when. And that's where Aura comes in, today's video sponsor. Aura basically left out all the essential online security.
That what is taking place today is the greatest transfer of public wealth to private hands in the history of this earth.
These days, people and the resources are controlled not by viceroys and occupying armies, but by other, more sophisticated means, of which the principal weapon is debt.
War and debt are exactly the same thing, except for one point, which is that nobody needs to occupy territory today.
Debt is one of the most subtle and powerful forms of imperialism in the world. Sure, to the world, it looks like these bankers are offering a rose. We're giving Ukraine emergency relief. But it's not free money, it's debt. Debt that has to be paid back with interest. And before Ukraine, this is how debt slavery would normally be pitched. Let's say you've got a massive construction or engineering—
I'll just say that this is not often talked about. I don't know Tran and their content. I'm sort of surprised to be hearing this from them. I don't know if they do this kind of stuff all the time or what, but this is something that, you know, IMF, World Bank, I think goes back to Bretton Woods, right? This whole thing. We should know about these things. This is how U.S. imperialism and the West holds countries like in bondage, you know? This is how they're sort of treated as second-class citizens around the world. This is how, you know, this is how global capital, you know, keeps, you know, these countries on their knees or literally fighting like they do in Ukraine.
Company that specializes in really big projects like hydroelectric plants or vital infrastructure. You want more money, but there's a problem. You see, first world countries have money, but they already have all the infrastructure they need, which leaves you trying to get money from third world countries instead. The UN likes to call them least developed countries, or LDCs.
Well, I'll just say we have terrible infrastructure. For whom? All the infrastructure we need for whom, I would ask.
LDCs are the perfect market. They don't have any infrastructure, and they probably don't have companies with the expertise to build them either. You'll build their roads and power plants, and the people in power in that poor country will get all the credit for improving their nation. But there's only one problem. These are least developed countries. They don't have the billions they would need to pay you for these projects. But that's where the magic of debt in the form of foreign aid comes in. You see, foreign aid is a deceptive term for debts. It makes it seem
Is he going to do a China bet? Is he going to try to do... Is he going to try to do China bet? Is he going to try to say this is... China does the Belt and Road Initiative? Is he gonna try to talk shit about China? Because that's entirely different. He seems more pro-China, honestly. Okay.
Seem like these really big banking institutions are actually trying to help, and it leaves Americans saying, "Oh look, we're doing so much to help these poor nations. That's so nice of us." But for the most part, humans, especially those with money and power, don't really do things out of the kindness of their hearts. There's always some ulterior motive, and that's not always a bad thing, it's just human nature. And for the people offering services like construction, foreign aid is their bread and butter, because suddenly the countries that could never afford your hydroelectric plant suddenly can. And you get a big fat paycheck in return. And the politicians and bankers who arrange the foreign aid, well, they're just as happy, because the more debt LDCs take on, the harder it will be for them to repay it, and the more money they'll owe you. The best part about countries owing you something? You're the one calling the shots. These poor countries were invaded in the traditional sense, but the outcome is functionally the same.
The United States, says the report, is capable and willing to pursue important policy objectives in the banks by exercising the financial and political leverage at our disposal.
All the while, these bankers are swimming in future interest earnings. So you see, burying countries in debt is a brilliant way to enrich countries that are already well off. It's
pretty good content.
Imperialism 2.0. Why waste time on wars and invasions that the public hates when you could just get these countries to sign their futures away with smiles on their faces? All the while...
Did he call it Imperialism 2.0? He just rebranded neocolonialism. He just rebranded it? We already got a name for it.
Many of these infrastructure projects end up being unprofitable or poorly constructed anyways. But it doesn't matter, because they already signed the loan.
The world's oldest human rights organization, the Anti-Slavery Society, has declared debt a contemporary form of slavery. Nowhere is this more vividly demonstrated than here in the Philippines, where 44% of the national budget is given to paying interest charges to foreign banks.
One Filipino child dies every hour because of the increase in debt service payments.
Debt has been, in the past decade, the largest new contributing factor to hunger and to misery.
This is how it's traditionally done. But what about war-torn countries? How do bankers profit off of a country at war? Well, as an international banking institution, this is how you apply debt imperialism to Ukraine.
Don't forget a ton of people. Yeah, you know, you already met. It's a good video.
And on top of it,
I was going to say something they already said.
Invasion of Ukraine, devastating for people in Ukraine, but also impact.
Step number 1, show some solidarity. You need to make the world believe that you genuinely care about Ukraine, and you only have their best interests at heart.
We will limit
these protests were so confused.
That you genuinely.
These protests were so Oh! We got a Bandera flag. We've got an OUN flag. If you don't know about that, I don't know. I can't help you at this point.
Really care about Ukraine, and you only have their.
And also, they were very confused. A lot of people were like, "No war," and a lot of people were like, "Intervene. We need air defense," and also no war. Those two things are at odds, y'all.
Best interests at heart.
Oh, there's another red and black flag. There's another one. That's a neo-Nazi flag, y'all. Just want to say. That's why they have it.
Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for you, ill-begotten gains.
Send out
All right, why don't you do that for the warmongers here first?
PR people, condemn Russia, slap sanctions on the oligarch of the day, and make sure everyone knows just how anti-Putin you really are. Then appeal to the people of Ukraine. Tell them they have your full support. Make them think you're completely on their side. For this to work, the world has to believe that you're acting in the best interest of the Ukrainian people.
Today, I'm announcing another $800 million to further augment Ukraine's ability to fight in the east, in the Donbas region. Light will win over darkness. Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you.
As an example, just copy what the International Monetary Fund or IMF and the World Bank already said about Ukraine. We are deeply shocked and saddened by the devastating human and economic toll brought by the war in Ukraine. People are being killed, injured, forced to flee, and massive damage is caused to the country's physical infrastructure. We stand with the Ukrainian people through these horrifying developments. Translated from PR speak, we'll keep you in our prayers, but we're actually not going to do anything out of our way to help. Because if the IMF and World Bank really did care, they would probably start by wiping out all of Ukraine's $22 billion in debts owed to those same bankers.
Bretton Woods project, yeah.
That would have helped free up the government's finances to help Ukrainians in need.
Бог, чтобы они доехали хотя бы. Дай Бог, чтобы они доехали. Чтобы они были счастливы. Да, ну там хотя бы не летит.
Потом приняла решение, укреплять бомбоубежище. Я пришла. Бомбоубежище, не знаю, я верю в то, что оно спасет.
2 недели так стояли стойко, а теперь уже не можем. Холодно, очень замерзаем. Ни воды, ни света, ничего нет, ни кушать.
Дуже страшно, дуже.
Неизвестность, едем в неизвестность. Куда мы едем, не знаем.
But that is not the priority right now. You have a much, much better way to help. Not just foreign aid, but emergency aid.
Как мы выжили, я до сих пор не понимаю.
Ukraine has a lot of borders with Romania, with Moldova. We have programs in those countries that can be added to support the refugee flow.
Step number 2. Offer
CBS.
financial assistance. In 1991, Ukraine was one of the poorest Soviet territories, and it didn't get much better. Even after the fall of the USSR, Ukraine was still seen as an underachiever. Over the years, Ukraine has had to rely more and more on foreign aid to get by. But war? When a country is at war, they will do anything for cash. Why? Because war is ungodly expensive. Wars often bankrupt nations or destroy their currencies because of the money printing. There are guns to buy, vehicles to buy, soldiers to pay, hospitals to maintain, and infrastructure to rebuild. If it's a choice between getting destroyed versus surviving in debt, they're gonna sign the loan every single time. And that's why war is the perfect time to saddle a country in debts. So you offer them emergency aid. And then you shout from the rooftops about how moral and generous you are for giving them not a loan, but aid. And with all that new money, there are a whole lot more strings attached. Even though Ukraine already owes billions in foreign debts, the IMF has given it another $1.8 billion emergency loan. And the World Bank added another almost $600 million in loans too, while not forgiving a single penny of their existing debts. Even if the war stops right now, Ukraine is going to need a lot of time to rebuild and get the economy going. So how would it be expected to pay back almost $2 billion in loans plus interest on top of its already existing $20 billion plus in foreign debts? On average, the IMF charges Ukraine 9% in total charges and interest on their loans. So after a few years, Ukraine will have to pay back an extra $126 million on their $1.4 billion loan. And the World Bank? In 2020, they charged Ukraine 14% in interest on average. That means they would make $82 million on their $600 million loan. For a country with a GDP of just $150 billion before the war, that would be a lot to ask. But now, with so many Ukrainians leaving the country and economic activity halted, it is almost impossible. But don't let that bother you, because you know what? As long as Ukraine misses payments or creates new payment plans, you get to add more and more fees and surcharges that will eventually earn you millions. But it's not like Ukraine has years before it needs to make its next payments. Just this year, it has $7.3 billion due. more than all the money it spends on education in a year, going into the pockets of its loan sharks. But at least for you, life couldn't get any better. Because the benefits of offering Ukraine financial aid don't just stop with the millions you make in profits. Oh no, there is something even better in it for you. Ukraine needs money so badly, you can get away with telling them to do pretty much anything in return. For decades, loans from the IMF and World Bank have come with some serious strings attached. Strings in the form of policy changes. Every time international lenders offer Ukraine money, they add a few things they want changed to the fine prints, like better conditions for international investors, deregulation of industries, reducing government subsidies, more privatization of state-owned companies. Anything you think might make your business in Ukraine easier and more profitable, just add it to the fine prints and watch them sign their freedom away. And what countries control the IMF and the World Bank? Why, the United States, of course. With the US controlling a whopping 70% of the voting power in the IMF, these loans and their subsequent policy changes becomes a sneaky way to influence the regime in power to be pro-US. After all, when you're being bombed and shot at, when you desperately need money to fight back, the last thing on your mind are those pesky terms and conditions at the bottom of the page.
He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
Будемо захищати нашу державу, тому що наша зброя – це наша правда. Наша правда в тому, що це наша земля, наша країна.
Step number 4. Encourage the war. The fight between good and evil is as old as humanity itself. It plays out in the tales we told around the campfire, in our religions, in our superhero movies today. People love a good hero versus villain story, and this is the primal instinct you want to tap into. So you want to make sure the world follows the fear-mongering narrative we talked about earlier. Putin is pure evil, Zelensky is pure good. By supporting Ukraine with foreign aid, you're helping good overcome evil. Make sure that anything that goes wrong in Ukraine is Putin's fault.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war. And now he and his country will bear the consequences.
Putin, щоб ти здох, сука!
All the new debt Ukraine has? Well, it wouldn't have happened if Putin didn't invade. Ukraine is struggling to make its payments? Russia's fault, obviously. Make sure that all that hate and anger is aimed only at Vladimir Putin so that you can keep screwing over the Ukrainian people in the background. If people by some miracle start asking you to forgive Ukraine's debts, just tell them your hands are tied. If you cancel Ukraine's
Yikes. That's Euromaidan?
By some miracle start asking you to forgive Ukraine's debts, just tell them your hands are tied. If you cancel Ukraine's debts, every poor country in the world will want to do the same, and then you'd have no money to help anyone. Forcing Ukraine to pay is only fair, and you know what? If Ukraine can't make all their payments, you'll be happy to restructure their debt payments or loan them even more money to pay off their current payments.
PM Pure X, what's that? Anyone falls for what?
Step number 6. Enslave the nation. No matter which way the war goes, Ukraine will end up enslaved, either obviously through the control of Russia or unobviously through the control of the West via international financial institutions like the IMF, which is just a fancy term for bankers. Enslavement of Ukraine by Russia is out in the open, and it goes against all of our Western ideals of democracy and freedom, so the West stands in solidarity against it. Enslavement through Western debt, however, is much more subtle. But the result in terms of control is functionally the same. It's still enslavement either way, but at least there's no direct violence. In the first 2 months of the invasion, Ukraine paid almost $700 million to its creditors, money that could have gone to help the people of Ukraine if their foreign debt was forgiven. Instead, Ukraine had to promise it would keep paying its debt on time with the help of, you guessed it, financial assistance from international institutions. The same institutions that will come knocking for their money plus interest in a few years' time when the public mind forgets about Ukraine and moves on to the next outcry.
Not bad. Pretty good video.
What's up guys, hope you enjoyed the video today. If you are new here, my name is Jake and we make documentaries just like this one every single week on money, power, and crime. So make sure you...
Pretty good video. But it's like, I don't know if this guy's like based Marxist Lenin guy, you know, right? Or if he just happened to learn about this. Sometimes people just reach the correct conclusion. This is just what they have always done. It's like this is not the first time they've done it in Ukraine, right? There's a pattern here, and the same thing is happening in Ukraine. Yeah. He seems to know a lot, but avoids any systemic talk because I think he likes money. I wonder what you mean by that. His voice doesn't make me want to die inside. Yeah, he's got a listenable voice. That was a good video, I think. I don't know what else I think about it. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the rest of Jake Tran's content, but I think that was good content. I can't seem to think of anything else that needs to be said, and I hope more people know about what he's talking about. This is one of those things that sort of maybe pulled me left along the way, was learning about these things and realizing that this is like one of the ways that like global capital and like bankers, specifically bankers, like they act like the mafia, like a worldwide mafia. You know what I mean? They're gonna give you a loan. And it's pretty much like, hey, you got a nice country over there. It would be terrible if you lost your nice little country, right? That's what they do. That's just how they act. Definitely important for people to know. Okay, I'm ending the clip. Thank you for watching. Please support on Patreon. Keep this content alive. Thank you, Blake, Jasmine, Boondocks Dragon, Ira, Vivian, and Nasai. Love your face. Also, big shout out, Todd Gonzalez. Thank you, Todd.